Hi, everyone. Can you see this okay? All right. My name is Chris. I'm a full stack web developer. I'm excited to be here presenting my project Time Capsule to you guys today. Time Capsule is a full stack application created to help users send files across time through email, and capsules can contain just about any file type. So I'd like to start by just giving a quick walkthrough of the user experience. A user visits the page, they can sign up or sign in, but for our purposes today, we'll just use the demo account. When they sign in, they're taken to their home page where they can see a list of the capsules that need to be sent or have already been sent. And then there's also a button to create a new capsule. So when they click the button, they're taken to this capsule creation form where they can drag and drop to add a file, or they can just click and open the file browser. Once they select a file, they can also specify a recipient as well as a date and time to send this out. And then once they submit it, they're taken back to their home page where they can see an updated view with the capsule that's going to be sent. And so that's it for this user. But for the recipient, they'll end up receiving an email at the specified date and time containing the download link, which will take them to this page back on the app. Here, they're just, simple download button. They can download whatever was sent to them, and they're good to go. So that takes us through, what's going on with, the user interaction, but I want to talk a little bit about the code and what's actually happening to make sending and receiving capsules possible. So we start on the capsule creation form. And the first thing I do when I submit the capsule is I parse the raw date and time values for their individual components, and then I convert them into an ISO date string. This date string is not only more convenient to store in the database, it also allows me to preserve the time zone so that a user sending a capsule to a recipient across the country still has a good idea of when it's going to arrive. Once the request is sent to the server, it's taken to this route. But before I talk about this, I just want to briefly touch on this upload object I create with the Multer and Multer S3 packages. This upload object connects to my S3 bucket, and then it includes a function, or maybe I didn't word that right, but basically this upload object I can use as middleware in this route so that when the request is received, it automatically uploads the attached file to Amazon S3 and then returns the URL to the location in S3 and attaches it to the location property on the file object. Once I have the file stored in S3 and the location for the URL, I can then insert the URL along with the rest of the capsule data into my database. So once I had that done, the next thing I needed to figure out was how to send an email. Well, first, how to figure out which capsules needed to be sent and then send them in an email. So to do that, I created this JavaScript file, which utilizes the node mailer package to create a transporter object. This transporter object connects to an SMTP server, which allows me to send emails from my app. So to do that, I query the database to find any capsules that have not already been sent out and where the time is before now. I then retrieve those capsules, and for each one, I generate an email using the transporter object. In this email, I might as well show the email really quick. In this email, the download link points back to the download page, but in it, it preserves the capsule ID in the URL. That way, when they click this, it points back to, let's see, this route on my server, where the capsule ID is taken from the request parameters. The capsule is retrieved from the database, so I have the URL. And then instead of actually just redirecting the user to that URL, I want to keep the data in my S3 bucket private. So what I do is I parse the key name from that URL. And then once I have my bucket parameters, I can use the getSignURL promise method on S3 to create a temporary URL that allows me to keep my data private while still letting users download their capsules. And that is it for the code I wanted to present. Just to end it, the kind of things I wanted to add on this, I mean, there's really a lot. One thing is I want to be able to, so I'll start with the code first. I recently got done refactoring everything to hooks, but I really want to go through and convert all my promise chains to async and await. Outside of that, on the actual app, I really just want to give the whole thing a facelift, especially this capsule list. I feel like especially as it gets large, I ended up just throwing on a max width so it wouldn't get too large. but I feel like making a way where it could maybe, you know, split to 2 or 3 per row, kind of flesh everything out. You know, same with the email. I just kind of threw this together because writing HTML for an email is pretty new for me. This is acting kind of weird. But other than that, I mean, just a whole bunch of little quality of life improvements. But that does wrap up my presentation. So I'd like to open up the rest of it for any questions or comments if anyone has any.
Can we see a little bit of the React code if you don't mind, or the front end code?
Absolutely. Let's see, this resize thing is being a little weird right now. There we go. Okay, so here's my form. Is there any particular page or like component you wanted to check out?
Not any in particular, but I guess here right off the bat, I can see you've picked up hooks, so you're comfortable kind of using use state, use context, use effect.
Yes, I'm pretty comfortable. So what happened, this is actually the second time I refactored my app to use hooks. And the first time around, I introduced a bug in my authorization and I could never quite figure out where it was. I think it had something to do with an effect hook I threw out. Sorry, am I breaking up right now? Okay, good. So I ended up just reverting the entire branch and starting again. So I'm feeling pretty comfortable with hooks now. But if we go to my app.jsx, you can actually see, oh man, my computer is struggling with all this. Well, if this decides to open, you can see that I started to refactor and most of it's done, but I mean, there's a lot of stuff. This is where I introduced the bug last time. So I haven't, you know, I've been extra careful on this one. But outside of that, I'm like, I would say I'm 85 to 90% comfortable with hooks. I've got it pretty much down. Like using state, especially, context I'm good with. Effects I'm pretty good with. There we go. Yeah, sorry, I think my computer's just chugging with everything open right now. I hope you guys can even see that. But yeah, so to answer your question though, it's like I'm pretty comfortable with hooks. I still have a little bit more to learn, but I've been working with them every day. So I'm, you know, pretty comfortable. I can pick it up pretty quick.
Awesome, great job.
Thank you.
Any other last minute questions? Awesome. So thank you, Chris, for sharing. Our next presenter will be Eniola.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here. My name is Eniola. I'm a software developer, and we'll just be sharing my screen now. That's okay. Can you all see my screen? Can you all see my screen, please?
It's loading right now. Oh, there we go.
Great. So this was the solo project I built while learning at LearningFuze. It's called Perfect Pepper. Perfect Pepper is a recipe app for people who love to cook, who love to try new recipes and love food, and love to be in a community of like-minded individuals. Once the user logs in, so for demonstration purposes, I have a demo login, username and password that has already been registered. So once the user registers and logs in, they see the homepage. Now the homepage has a curated recipe, and the curated recipe is for users who would like to be adventurous and try out something new. All right, so all the user needs to do to get the recipe for this is to click on the title, and the Chinese chicken thighs shows the ingredients, the directions on how to make the meal or the recipe. But say this user already knows what they want, right? All they need to do is click on the search bar. And once they click on the search button, they get to this page, and they could just simply type in a keyword or an exact match of what they're looking to make. But I used fuzzy string matching to create this function. So if the user types in just chicken, all of the available chicken recipes gets displayed, and they can easily pick up on any one of them. They could also search for another recipe, say brownie, for example. How that works basically, fudgy brownies. I don't. There we go. My PC is really struggling as well. How that works basically is that once the user searches, let me show you my back end and how it queries. I'm so sorry, my PC is super slow. So I call the Gitmed method on this path API fuzzy with the recipe title, of course. That's how it queries the database. Then save the recipe title in this variable. This variable is what I use when querying the database. So I select all recipes from recipes that have a recipe title that looks something like what the user has typed in. And if it's right, then they get a status of 201. And of course, the results displays. If it is wrong, they get, or if something happens, like an error happens, they get the message an unexpected error occurred. But aside from that, the user can also post or share a new recipe that they have, say they have a recipe that has been passed on from generations to generations, and I think it's really great to share with the community. All they need to do is put the name of this recipe, say chicken tacos, for example, and the link to its image. Now, this link must not be copyrighted. It's just something that they could use to like describe or just as a placeholder for what the food is going to, or the meal is going to turn out to look like. And once they submit it, there's a post request that is being made to the database. And this database stores this post request with a unique ID that auto increments, of course. So for everyone who posts, there's a unique ID for each of their posts. And there's the ID that helps link the measurements and ingredients for the recipe to the recipe title and its image. So let's say for the measurement, I'm going to say 1/4 cup of olive oil, right? And that makes a post request to the ingredients table with that unique recipe ID. And I could keep populating this, but for the sake of time, I'm going to just click on done. Once the user is done, then they share the instructions for making the recipe. And I could say, boiled chicken, for example, and add it. And once I'm done adding all of the instructions, I click on complete recipe, and that takes me to this. It shows me the title of the recipe and all the ingredients I need to make it and directions. So basically, just using the post method, I post all of the information and data to the appropriate database. Using state, I decide what to display at every time. So if the user clicks on submit, of course this is a method. I call it fetch method. I call fetch and tell it to post, and then once the user clicks submit, it displays. It chooses what to display basically, and that's not all. The user can also see all recipes available and in the database. So that's like all of the recipes. But what really happens when the user clicks on all recipes is that the component did mount calls like just fetches all the recipe, gets all of the recipes. And to display any recipe title, like say if I clicked on salmon, for example, because of the title, the ID is discovered, and once the ID is discovered, there's a fetch request that gets like the details using this ID and sets all of them to like appropriate arrays or variables in state, and that decides like if this does state or display is equal to false, there's something you should display. Else, if it's true, then you display like all the stuff you've gotten from the GET request, and that is how I manage state and manage like the data to be shown to the client or to the user. At the back end, I use for the authentication and authorization, I use Argon and Express, and PostgreSQL for my database. And that would be all from me. I'm going to open the floor now for questions, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Eniola. Yes, any questions for Eniola? All right.
From a technology, sorry, I was scrambling from a mute.
Oh, for sure.
From a technology perspective, what would you say was like the most challenging part for you?
Okay, that's easy. It's the it will be the handling and querying the database, because you have to like get all the information from like different tables at the same time, and I had to use common table expressions. It was such a battle, but here I am. I did it, and I couldn't be much more prouder.
That's awesome. I guess other side of the coin, what was the part that you found the most rewarding?
Creating my own database. So all of this was created from scratch. I built it. So yeah.
Congratulations. Looks great.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Our next presenter will be Daniel. And then don't forget to unmute yourself, Daniel.
All right, I assume everyone can see that.
Yes.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Daniel, software engineer. So I'll be giving you guys a quick walkthrough of my one of my most recent projects, Lightbulb. So Lightbulb is like a place, a web application where people can share some of their startup ideas and post those ideas, and even connect with other users with the app in the app. So here we have a quick, quick info about the app. Let's go into our demo account. So the first page we land on is the home page. This is essentially our feed. So this consists of every post that every user made in the app. So for each post, it's a card where we see the user's avatar image, the content. Let's find a better post. Yeah, the content, which is the idea, and then the information of the user ID, so who posted it. And clicking on this will show up a comment section where you can just comment anything and post that. And of course, some of these have comments already. And this is a saved icon. Of course, clicking on it will save it to the user's saved list. So let's go ahead and see that. So as you can see, go to our profile section, we'll see the general profile of the user, like the user ID and email and the avatar. Here we'll see the post that this specific user has made. So the list of posts that they made. For each post, they can choose to edit their post, delete their post, or see the comments of that post. And on our Save tab, we can see some of the posts that the user saved. So I think we saved some earlier, and then if we unsave that, it'll update accordingly. Some of these posts actually, since this is a live site, are made by random people, so there's some, not relevant posts, but that's like the general rundown of the app. Of course, you can log out. This web app is a Pern stack app, so, and for the front end, I used a lot of material UI for the library. So let's go into the code. So one of the challenges I faced initially when I was building it is to get this save functionality to work correctly. So in order to do that, I made a schema or a table, separate table that has a list of the saved posts that includes the user ID and a post ID, since every saved post will be different per user. And then so every time the component mounts or updates, I made sure to fetch that table with save table based on the user ID, and then set that into my state, which is the save state. And then for that, to render that checked or unchecked, I used a sum method to return basically anything that matches with the post ID. So for each post ID, if that post ID is also found in the saved array, it will return as true and then check that out. And of course, to update it accordingly without me having to reload the page, like so, I passed in the saved array to the use effect as a dependency. Some of the other features that I plan on stretching out is a better way to customize like each user. So like maybe functionality to edit your avatar so that each user can be more, it's different. Not everything is the same. But that's about it that I have for now, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Daniel. Do we have any questions for Daniel?
Again, scrambling for the mute button, sorry.
Mhm.
What, in terms of like front end or back end, where do you feel like you're most comfortable?
Right now, I think I just have more experience with front end stuff. Like most of my projects, I kind of focus a lot on the front end, like the look of the app. So, but I do like just in terms of back end, it's just like to connect with the database and update accordingly. So, to answer your question, short answer is yeah, front end.
Cool. Is there any other, in terms of the app that you built, are there any other like features you'd like to add on to it, or how do you kind of see it growing from here?
Yeah, basically, I guess like a sharing method to like other like social media platforms, and like I mentioned, like more customization functionality, I guess, for each user.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, any last minute questions? All right, Josh, you are up next.
All right. I'm gonna share my screen. All right, are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Josh, and I'm a full stack developer for this app that I made. My app's called Travel Companion. And as you might guess, this is a travel app for traveling enthusiasts who, want to see what kind of city they want to visit and what kind of reviews other people might have who have visited the city. So let me just guide you through like the basics of my app. So on the homepage right here, I have a search a city and a visit wish list. So let's get started by searching a city. Let's say some user wants to go to like San Francisco. And you can see that I have a auto places complete function here. And then when you click it, there's an enter. So on this page, the city descriptions page, you're able to see like a preview of the preview image of the city. And then it says the city name. And then if you have been there, you could enter like a review, and then the review obviously gets posted into the database. So let's create actually, let's see if there's any reviews first. So if you go to the reviews page, I haven't made any reviews yet. So it will say there are no reviews yet, be the first one to review. So let's submit a review. Let's just put like a random review here. And then click submit. It gets posted to the database, and you can see here, you can see the username and then the comment, the kind of activities they recommend and the food they recommend. So if another user from the other side like sees like the review and they're interested in visiting it, they could go to the homepage here under the visit wish list. They could add San Francisco to their future wish list to visit. So add, and then they could check mark it whenever they have visited and so on. So yeah, that's basically the gist of my app. Let me just show you like the thing that I found the most difficult. So going back to this CD descriptions page, getting this image was like kind of difficult for me because there was like multiple processes that I needed to do to obtain the image itself. So I used the Google Places API, and what the first time I used the API, I didn't know what kind of data it like sent out, like when I fetched it. So I looked at the console logs and everything, and it's kind of weird because whenever I fetched the data for the image, it gave me a JSON file instead of like an actual image link. So what I did to fix that was, so you see here, the cons URL was the first URL that I fetched for the first time I fetched the request. But what I needed to do was get another URL with that JSON data that I obtained from the first URL. So what I did to get around that was I used the package Axios, and I picked it up after I asked questions about how to fetch the data from the backend, because you can't just like use the keyword fetch. I learned that the hard way because I was trying it for a few hours and it did not work out. But I learned there's Axios, then that just made a huge difference. It's a lot easier. And yeah, so after you fetch the URL, it responds with a JSON file, which I use on my React app right here. Whenever the page loads and the image gets displayed on this page here. For future implementations, I think, as you can see here, whenever I, hold up. Oops. From the earlier review that I did, as you can see, the username is anonymous user. I've been working on creating like user lists and stuff and like login pages. So I have like, this is what I'm working on right now. So far I only have the admin and my username right here, but I want to get that fixed soon. But that's like one of the features I want to implement right away, but because that's kind of a nice thing to have, to see like a username and you can see their profile and everything. So yeah, thank you for listening in. Let me know if you have any questions.
What packages and pieces of technology are you using to do the login?
I'm using hold on, let me see. So index, I'm using Argon and JSON with web token.
Nice. And then how are you able to auto populate as you type when you do your search?
Oh, so I found a package on Places autocomplete, which is a package using the Google Maps API actually. So what I did was I used the set state hooks for the address and the city names. So what I did was, whenever a user types, right, let's say you want to go to Anaheim, if you just type the first like 3 letters, it sends it to the state, and then it just like with the Places autocomplete, it sends a value, and then whenever the value is changing, it updates the value that you can see from the div that you see down here. And then, yeah, that's basically it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions? All right. Thank you for presenting. Our last but not least, Viviane.
Hi, everyone. Let I'm gonna start sharing my screen. All right, I believe everyone should be seeing my screen right now. I'm Viviane. I'm a graduate and software developer, a graduate of LearningFuze. I'm going to show you my search app or a search check app. So right now we're looking at the homepage where the user can search for a search spot. So there's an input field here. The user can type the name of a search spot or a city. I also included a list of suggestion of search spots. So just so if someone that's maybe not so search savvy wants to use the app, so the person can still get the experience of the app. So let's use that so I can show you the functionality. I'm going to click on this search spot right here, this Swamis Beach, California. So we're going to check the surf conditions. So if, as you can see, it fetches the data and it renders a few different components. So the surf conditions today right here, 2 feet at 6 seconds period and the swell direction. So if you're a surfer, this will all make sense. It also shows the water temp, the air temp, and the wind conditions. I also included the daylight time, so it's nice to know, when the sunrise and the last light, all those data are. So this is local time for this, according to the search spot, of course. I also included tide data. So today there are 4 different tide points, low and high points, with their respective times and the height of the tide in feet. Right here on the surf check page, you can see there's a heart icon. It's rendered as highlighted because there's a favorites page. I'm going to click on the favorites page. So this surf spot has been favorite. As you can see, it's one of the spots on the favorites page. So of course, if I click on any of the favorite items, it'll take me back to the surf check, right? Going back to the favorites page, I added this functionality. I thought it would be a nice thing to rename the surf spot. So it opens a mode out, and let me just show you why I included that. So let's go back to the homepage and actually use the search functionality. Let me just type Newport Beach. So here's the result, and let's say I'm going to click on the first result. So here's the surf conditions today for Newport. I'm going to add it to my favorites list. So here it is, and as you can see, it's a pretty long name. So I thought it would be nice to just be able to rename it, do something shorter. So I rename it. So this is the whole app. I think I forgot to mention it's a front-end app. And I did refactor it initially. I built it as just vanilla JavaScript in DOM queries, and I refactored it to use React. Here's a little bit of the code. The app, of course, the app files. You can see I use router for all the routing. I did create a couple of different context to share the data, among the different components. The main one is the surf, what I call the surf data context. So of course, there's a provider and declares a few different states, such as a location, surf data, if it's loading, or if it's an invalid spot. Because let's say someone tries to check surf conditions for Kansas, so it's gonna, be an invalid spot. First function here is a handle location clicked. Sets the loading to true. It sets the location to the props it received. So if I click here, South Africa, the props will be the location. From those props, I need the geometry, the latitude and longitude, because that's what I need to fetch the surf data, right? So that's the next step. So it's an async function. I use try and catch for this to fetch. So it fetches, and if it returns as undefined for the wave height, that's when I know it's an invalid spot. So I set invalid spot to true. Otherwise, I set surf data to the returning result of the fetch call, right? So this is my provider. And let me show you, let's see, I'll show you the favorites page since it's, let me open the favorites page right here as well. So favorites page, I use from the context, the handle location clicked. I also use the set invalid spot, some states right here. So it includes the modal. So I have a state for is favorite modal open. And also for the favorite that I'm going to click, use effect. I do use local storage to store all the favorites list. So when it renders the components, I get the items from my local storage. Every time a favorites change, I set the item to the local storage, right? I also have a closed favorite modal. The modal is included right at the end of the render here. So if it's favorite modal open, if that's truthy, then of course it's going to render the modal, and I pass a few props. So be able to close which favorite was clicked, a list of the favorites in a set favorite function. Just really quick, here's the code for the modal. It's just, you know, as you can expect, it had that renaming change. So it has a function to rename the name, function to submit the form. If it finds the index in the array and it renames, I use splice to add that to the array in the same index, right? Because we don't want the order here to change when you rename, and then it looks kind of weird. So that's it. And the other thing I wanted to show, which was gave me some headache, it was just here, of course, we have to show the local time. So let's click on Australia. Of course, it's already April 1st there, and all this time it's returned from the API in UTC time, but I need to have that shown as the local time, right? So here's just an overview here. There's a lot of, I had to deal with a lot of the UTC offset, time offset, transform all that into milliseconds, and to make sure, this is for the Thai data. So to make sure that, for example, in this case, I requested the data that started at midnight of the day of the local time. So Australia is April 1st, midnight of April 1st, and it ends on 11:59 of April 1st. So just, yeah, lots of offset and milliseconds calculation to figure that out. I understand there's a library, now I know, but it was nice to just do it on my own. Yeah, so that's it, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Awesome, thank you, Viviane. Yes, are there any questions for Viviane?
So when you're renaming the places, are you saving that rename name like locally, as it's kind of like an override from the data you're pulling from the API?
Yeah, so it saves. So let's see right here, right? So my rename, am I on the right one? Favorites modal. Yeah, so I have a handle rename change. So it's saved on the state as here, right here is the state rename and set rename as the event target. So right here, I use the spread operator. So I do the splice on the resulting, I filter the array of the entire, let me open the favorites. So here's a list of the favorites, right? So I filter it to I first filter the array, and then I splice to add the same index 0, because I don't want to remove or overwrite anything. And I use the spread operator with that favorite clicked that I got as a prop from the favorites page component, and I just replaced the formatted as the name of the source spot. So I replaced that to the rename again that I saved on the state, and then I set favorites to this resulting array. Set favorites was passed as a props from my favorites page. Yeah, and then yeah.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Viviane. Yeah, so I hope you all enjoyed the presentations that each of our alumni have presented. And actually, I would like to propose the room to be open